Welcome to LC Screen Talk. My name is Larry, and this is the final video for my Rotten Tomatoes Got It Wrong throughout the 2010s series. That's right, we're here. It is 2019, the final year of the decade. Thus, our series comes to a conclusion with the year we just finished, the most recent in our memory, 2019. So if you're not familiar with this series, every week I have been joined by one of my friends here on the FilmTube community as we discuss each and every year of the 2010s and give our picks for the 5 films that were overscored and underscored according to the tomato meter over on Rotten Tomatoes. So just a quick reminder, these are just the 5 films I think, as well as the 5 films my guest thinks were over and underscored. Our own personal opinions, and we look forward to hearing which films you think got a raw deal on Rotten Tomatoes in the comment section. So my final guest, capping off my Rotten Tomatoes Got It Wrong video series, I'm joined by Ryan O'Toole, Mr. Rotten or Fresh himself. So, Ryan, kick us off with your picks.
What's going on, guys? Ryan O'Toole here on LC Screen Talks channel. Larry, thank you so much for inviting me on your channel, man, to be a part of your Rotten Tomatoes Got It Wrong series. I myself have created a movie trivia show from the past on my channel called Rotten or Fresh, which Larry was a part of. Rotten or Fresh, which was this movie trivia show, basically about Rotten Tomatoes scores, and competitors have to try to guess what movies had certain Rotten Tomatoes scores, and I feel perfect to do this video, right? Larry has given me a very tough but great task of giving you guys my picks for 5 movies that I feel are too high or too low on the tomato meter on Rotten Tomatoes for the year 2019. There were a good amount of movies that I definitely disagreed with Rotten Tomatoes on, and there are a lot that I did agree with in terms of tomato meter scores. Anyway, Larry only wanted me to do 5, so I'm going to give you guys 5 picks. Okay, so the first movie that I picked that I feel the score is too low on the tomato meter on Rotten Tomatoes is Joker. Joker currently sits at a 69% on the tomato meter on Rotten Tomatoes, and personally I feel that score is too low for a movie that leads all movies in Oscar nominations this year. 11 Oscar nominations for Joker, and a Best Picture nominated film. I understand this movie has controversy, totally get it, but I personally loved it. Joaquin Phoenix gives the best performance of last year in my personal opinion. He easily has the Best Actor Oscar in my personal opinion. Goes from Arthur Fleck into that Joker character in the final act is absolutely perfect. And I can also see people having a complaint that this movie feels like Scorsese movies, like Taxi Driver meets King of Comedy. Now, I can understand that criticism, but comparing it to those 2 movies and you not loving it doesn't really make sense to me, in my opinion. The second movie that I have chosen I feel is too high on the tomato meter on Rotten Tomatoes is the Lego Movie 2, the second part. Lego Movie 2 currently sits at an 85% on the tomato meter on Rotten Tomatoes. Now that is way too high. Way too high of a score. Now the first Lego Movie is one of my favorite animated films this past decade. Just everything about that movie completely surprised me, and I'm sure everybody. While I enjoyed the animation in it and some of the new songs they added, just the clone Emmett character was a really stupid idea that didn't work fully. Chris Pratt's really entertaining, Elizabeth Banks as well, but I felt the story was completely forgettable in this. It had a cool Mad Max Fury Road concept, but they didn't really focus on that. It focused on this clone Emmett subplot too much. Now, 85% I feel is too high of a score. If it were up to me, I would bump Lego Movie 2 down to a 56%. The next movie is way too low. That's the next thing. So the next movie I chose is Glass. Now, Glass currently sits at a 37% rotten score. I had my issues with Glass, of course, but I didn't hate it. I didn't hate the overall movie. I still think Glass is a really good movie, but a bad ending. The first 2 acts of Glass were really good. I love James McAvoy and Bruce Willis, Sam Jackson. Sure, Mr. Glass was barely in the movie, and it does have that biggest issue. But really, once we get to that final act, I feel the ending to this movie is awful. That is the only awful thing about Glass. And because of that ending, I think critics were too harsh just giving it a 37% because it's a Shyamalan movie. We just gotta hate on Shyamalan again. Can't give him a good grade after Split. So 37% I think is too low. In my personal grade, I would give it a 58%. Just missing the fresh score. Next movie that I chose that I think is too high on the tomato meter, that is Ad Astra. One of the more divisive movies last year. Ad Astra currently sits at an 84% on the tomato meter. And I think that's too high. Now, I'm sure I'm going to get a lot of hate in the comment section from certain people. Introducing a lot of cool original aspects, but honestly, Mad Max in space on the moon planet and a weird McDonald's on this moon planet, some interesting weird concepts to introduce into this movie, and then it goes in a weird direction with this subplot with Tommy Lee Jones, and it just felt, huh? Now, if you really love this movie, I respect your opinion, but for me, I think Ad Astra is a really boring movie and didn't execute for me. I'll give it a 61%. I'll give it a 61% just fresh because of Brad Pitt, but 84% is too high. And the last pick for me that I feel is way too high on the tomato meter is an Oscar contending film. It's not a Best Picture nominee. I thought it was gonna be after all the noms it got. That is The Two Popes. The Two Popes currently sits at an 89% fresh rating. I don't think it's absolutely spectacular. It is overrated in terms of the Rotten Tomatoes score. 89% is too high. I really enjoyed the performances from Jonathan Pryce and Anthony Hopkins. Personally, I feel Anthony Hopkins and Jonathan Pryce should not be given Oscar nominations over guys like Willem Dafoe and Adam Sandler. There are so many better performances than these two. They just played two popes, and it's cool to see their lives, but honestly, I'm never gonna see this movie again. It's too weird and out there. Try to throw in some comedy. But overall, The Two Popes is just way too high on the tomato meter. I'm going to bump down The Two Popes score from an 89% to a 75%. It is a good watch. I really enjoyed the performances in it. It did have messages, but never going to see it again. Larry, thank you so much for inviting me on your channel, man. It's always a blast and pleasure to collaborate with you, man. On my channel or your channel. Bunch of collaborations to come, man. Really enjoy doing work with you. I have a YouTube channel, Ryan O'Toole, do tons of movie reviews, ranking videos, reactions, all movie content on my channel. I have a letterbox as well where I do written reviews. You can go check that out. And my Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram page. Thank you, Larry, once again. Back to you, man. Bye!
Thank you so much, Ryan, for joining me here on the channel. Thank you and Cody for taking the time out of your schedules to talk about movies with me here on my channel. I've had the pleasure of being a guest over on your YouTube channel several times, so I'm so happy to finally get a series going here that I could invite you to join me over here on my channel. So I knew I had to have Ryan be the last guest on the series to really bring us to a close here, because he was Mr. Rotten or Fresh, a series I adored, I know so many of us loved, and I had a blast being a part of. So he's pretty much synonymous with Rotten Tomatoes here on the FilmTube community, and I'm so glad he was a part of this series. Now, if you're not already, make sure that you go over to Ryan O'Toole's YouTube channel, hit that subscribe button, and show him some major love. You'll get reviews for all of the new film releases. as well as film discussions, big collaborations, and of course, ranking series. So you'll get all of that film content you crave. Of course, make sure you follow him over on Twitter as well, and those links will, of course, be in the description below. Last year, 2019, seemed to be a year in which I just did not agree with Rotten Tomatoes at all. This list could go on and on and on. I could have done 10 easily. Apparently, I just didn't know what a good film was if you asked the Rotten Tomatoes critics. But some movies, like Long Shot, were spared because, well, I don't understand the complete adoration for that film. I don't know that it's necessarily rotten. And there were plenty of others that easily could have been right in this cusp. Films that were just too low, like Dark Phoenix being the worst rated X-Men film under Origins. Are you kidding? But we're here to talk about the 5 films I definitely think should have been flipped or flopped from rotten to fresh. So kicking us off will be an opinion I don't think many others hold. I'm going to start off with The Addams Family, which currently sits at 43% on the tomato meter. Now, personally, I think people just wanted like a straight up horror film. I don't know what people wanted, but it seemed so much of the negative reviews that the Addams Family got came from the fact that it just didn't go dark enough. I don't know what we were expecting from an animated Addams Family film, but I think it went plenty dark. It gave us that macabre type of humor, that atmosphere that you come to expect and know from the Addams Family. It isn't completely light, it gives that gothic tone. We have a ton of homages back to both the original series and the films. And I thought it was pretty fun for what it wanted to deliver. Now, of course, I had problems. I think this is far from perfect. If you watch my animated films ranking, it's not all that high. But I think people just judged it too harshly off of preconceived notions heading into the movie. But I had fun with the Addams Family. It gave me what I was hoping for. It hit that right spot of dark, kind of macabre humor with a light-hearted tone that was accessible to younger children. So I think the Addams Family accomplished its goal and should have been fresh. However, a family film that I don't think accomplished its goal and couldn't decide on an audience, yet everybody loved, for me, Dora and the Lost City of Gold was just overscored. It comes in at a whopping 84% certified fresh. Now, if we're going to go fresh for something like this, I would say in the low 60s tops. But for me personally, Dora actually is just rotten. And as I said when I started to discuss this selection, I just don't think it knows who it's targeting, what the audience it wants is. First of all, we aged Dora up, and I don't understand why. Why did Dora need to be a teenager? This movie quickly would have solved a lot of its tonal problems for me if they had kept Dora a little girl. Dora and Diego on an adventure with their classmates as a small children gives you a more clear audience. But we aged her up. She's now a high schooler, a teenager. Now Isabel is great. I thought she killed it in the role of Dora. She embodies Dora. But we're going into like Tomb Raider-y action film, which is okay for older kids. But we keep a lot of the tropes from the very young Dora show. It gives us a lot of the messaging for a very young Dora show. In the same vein, I think it goes from just being self-aware about what the property of Dora is to making fun of it. I mean, they straight up make fun of Dora the Kid Show in this film. And teenagers who grew up watching Dora probably would think that's funny and go for it. But so much of the humor and the lessons are way too young and childish that I don't think they would enjoy that. I was just confused in this film, honestly. I was watching it and just baffled as to who this was aimed for, who this was made for, and ultimately it seemed like a tonal mess to me. It was just all over the place with what it was doing, that it overshadowed what could have been a fun adventure film. The animated sequence was a fun touch. Of course, getting some of the old school Dora faves in here was fun. Though that fox, I don't know. That was me, the whole movie. I don't know. And yet everybody except for me ate this film up and it got a whopping 84%. I don't get it, but here we are, and that's why I think it was highly overscored. Now back to a film I think was underscored. I have Glass, which has a horrible 37% on Rotten Tomatoes. Alrighty then. Now, in a sense, I can understand because the ending is because that ending leads to a very divisive reaction, and I understand it, but I think that was what it was going for ultimately. Now, I don't love the very, very end of this film, like legitimately just the very last scene, but up until there, I was fully on board with what this film was trying to say, what it did say, and what it accomplished. It wasn't the route I was ever expecting to go down, but it was an unexpected route that I appreciated. Again, James McAvoy is stellar in this movie. Bruce Willis, I think, did more here than I've seen him do in a lot of his recent films, and Samuel L. Jackson killed it as Mr. Glass. Plus Sarah Paulson, yes. Really liked this idea that kind of had us going back and forth about if these people were really heroes or superhuman or if they were just regular. I liked the twist that came in with Sarah Paulson's character, and I was intrigued watching this story. It was a grounded film that took us in an unexpected direction that ultimately worked for me. They had just cut it a few minutes shorter. It's a fitting, reality driven end to this storyline and this trilogy that I thought worked overall. There are certainly some flaws, there are certainly some problems, but I think maybe folks were just disappointed that it didn't go full superhero meetup Clash of the Titans. But I thought we got just enough of that in a reality driven, grounded type of way that it worked for me. I thought the movie was good. I think it was solid. One of those that I would put right around maybe 70%, but far and away, I don't think it deserves this 37% on the tomato meter. Now, for probably my most controversial opinion on this video, and one that I know for sure my co-host for the day does not agree with. A film that I just think was highly overscored was Uncut Gems, which currently sits at a 91% on the tomato meter. What? I understand it to a certain point because seemingly everybody here in our community loves the film. Everybody just thinks it's so amazing. Now, I do think Adam Sandler is actually very good in the film and certainly gives, if not his best, like top 3 best performances of his entire career. Plus, it's always great to see Adam Sandler give us these dramatic roles. And don't say I just don't like the Safdie brothers, because I love Good Time. I think it's a great movie that did everything this one does, just good. That movie actually was tension filled and gripping and well executed to me, but that's a different story. All I heard was about how anxiety ridden and how stressful Uncut Gems was, how it just gripped you and had you like thrilled the entire time. Honestly, the only thing Uncut Gems did was give me a headache. I didn't really find it all that anxiety driven. The final scene and that final sequence was the closest we got where it was like, okay, what's gonna happen? But everything up until then is just obnoxious. This is right up there for me when it comes to the most obnoxious films I watched in 2019. The entire first act of this movie is one note. It is loud, loud, loud. Everybody's yelling, everybody's screaming, the music is blaring in your face. The cinematography just falls flat, in particular throughout that first thing. Plus, we're just going in circles and circles and circles. It's just this one tone that is loud, in your face, brash, obnoxious. And when we get those quieter moments, when we get these more personal moments with Adam Sandler and his family, that's when this film finally hooked me in a little bit. But then we just blast back into loud, obnoxious, and I was like, oh God. Plus, the depiction of women in this film is blech. I don't know. Idina Menzel's character being relegated to just the nagging wife, when honestly, she seems like probably the only sufferable character here. Everybody else is just an idiot. Everybody else in this movie, if they're not outright terrible, they're just stupid, and I don't really care. So I had no emotional core in this film. I had nothing to grasp onto. I had nothing to root for. I had nothing to invest me in the story that was underneath all of this loud, brash obnoxiousness. I don't get it. I don't understand why everyone thinks this is such an amazing film, but there you have it. It has a 91% on the tomato meter. All my fellow friends here in the community seem to adore it, and I'm just sitting here like, pass the Excedrin, extra strength, please. And then finally, my pick for an underscored film in 2019, I have Where'd You Go, Bernadette, which sits at a 48% on the tomato meter. So Richard Linklater makes his third appearance in this series, but finally, I've chosen him for an underscored project. But this isn't to necessarily say I think this movie is better than Boyhood or an amazing Richard Linklater film, but I think it's a pretty solid one overall, and it certainly should have gotten into the 60s, maybe even 70 percentile range. First of all, I love seeing Richard Linklater back to a film that has a point, that has a plot and a purpose. Cate Blanchett is fantastic in this film. Now, I don't know that I would have necessarily put her in the awards race, Golden Globes, but I do think she gives a very good performance and is able to bring a lot of humanity to a character that otherwise could just be like, oof, oh my, this woman, no thank you. But it's through her and her performance, honestly, that you understand the decisions of this character. You get it to a deeper level than we ever would have. Plus, I found the film to be quite entertaining and funny, especially for the first two acts of the movie. Her dealing in her socially awkward ways with Kristen Wiig's character and the people around her. Yes, they come off jerkish, but also I found them to be quite entertaining. And then I enjoyed the overall essence and messaging that comes with the third act. I talked about The Secret Life of Walter Mitty in a previous installment of this series, and I think in many ways this felt a lot like that film to me, where I just connected with what it was trying to say. I connected with our main character in deeper, less superficial ways, and it just got to me on that little bit more of a personal level. There certainly is a lot of over the top. This script and this story starts to get a bit too jumbled, but at its core, I think the film deserved much better than a 48%, and I actually quite enjoyed it. I know, I'm the only one. So that's it. Those are my picks as well as Ryan O'Toole's picks for the movies that Rotten Tomatoes just got wrong in 2019. What do you all think? Do you agree with the films we chose? Do you disagree? And more importantly, let us know the films you think Rotten Tomatoes just got wrong in 2019. Let us know either in the comment section down below, or you can hit either one of us up over on Twitter. Also, make sure that you are heading on over to Ryan's channel, subscribe, show him some love. I know you'll love the content you see. Before you head out, if you did like this video, hit that like button down below and subscribe to the channel so you are always up to date on my latest videos. I love you all so much for your continued support. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you next time. Bye!